First day of the Contemporary Istanbul Foundation Dialogue Series, we have Emerging Artists and Its Market. Moderating is Maria Gracia de Pedro, and we are joined by Wilko Austermann. Am I saying that right?
Yes.
Okay, amazing. He's the director of the museum. Oh dear God. The museum Gegenstandsfreier Kunst.
Very good.
Almost. We have art advisor and patron Emirhan Elkorek and Amar Zahr, founder of Aaz Art Advisory and the Beyrut Art Residency.
Thank you, Zahr, and thank you everyone for joining. I'm Maria, and I will sort of communicate with them. We want this to be a very nice conversation, and I think it will be a good opportunity to know as well each other, because we all work with emerging, with established artists with different periods, and we all like art. That I think is the most important, because it's the reason why we are all here. So I will start introducing Wilko. I wouldn't say the museum name, like Zahr was most talented than myself. So Wilko has been doing curating exhibitions as an independent curator for so many years, and he just joined in March as a director of the Museum of Object Free in Oldenburg in Germany. Wilko, I want to understand from your side, like, how do you approach the selection and the curation of artworks of emerging artists?
Yeah. Thank you for inviting me. Well, when I'm curating, for me it's very important to visit several art fairs, of course. So I really enjoy visiting like Artissima or the Position or Art Cologne or here this fair. But of course it's always important to like see. Now I'm the director of the museum in northern part of Germany, so I think it's also very important to have a look at, especially also at the art academies, to have a look at the graduation shows. And before I was like living 15 years in Düsseldorf in the Rhineland, and there are many artists living there, and and it's important to always see gallery shows, graduation shows, and then especially now with the focus where I'm working now in the Museum for Gegenstandsfreier Kunst, means like abstract art. So of course now I have a bit like a specific topic that I'm looking for, and I'm especially interested, and it was very interesting to hear the talk before, how nowadays artists are getting inspired, or how are they using like digital tools to create like a new analog also art language, especially with the focus on abstract art.
Yeah, that was going to be my question as well. Like, so what an emerging artist needs to produce, needs to make in order for you to, have an eye on, okay, this could be an artist that can exhibit in the museum. I am the director, so it's abstract, like the main focus you have now?
Well, yeah, nowadays, I'm now working for this museum, but besides this, sometimes I'm also still doing some freelance project, and before I had a bit like, I was creating many like group shows where I was inviting several artists to a specific theme, and there it was for me very important to invite artists, if there was a budget, of course, artists from several countries, several ages, because I find it very interesting to see how different artists work on like a similar topic, and to put them together in a show, which is also great for the artists to meet each other. And for me it's always important to build up corporations, to bring artists, collectors and people together. And to come back to your question, what makes it so like emerging and contemporary, I think it's important to look with a very critical perspective on the artworks. And now come back to this digital tool, because to come back to AI, this is something that is now like really developing. So this is like really the language from like our time we are living in. And I think, it's important to have a look at the tools, but also of course like political questions in this time.
No, that is of course very important, but what is the space that emerging artists could have in the museum? What the space they occupy? You have a specific part for them, no?
Well, I mean, in the museum now we have like 3 to 4 exhibitions in a year, and we do collect as well. And well, I mean, for example, like next Saturday we open an exhibition with one artist, female artist from Düsseldorf. She just graduated 2 years ago. So for me, it's also important to give like young artists a platform to have like their first institutional shows. And like next year, for example, I'm also planning to show an Hungarian artist, like giving him like the first institutional show in Germany. So I think also for me, like now being a director of a quite well-known, important museum is, yeah, it's for me important to give them a platform where they can have the experience, and we of course produce also like then a publication which is then also sustainable after the exhibition, that we can send the catalog to other institutions.
So what will be, you know, for an emerging artist, the advice that you can give? Like, you are an art historian. I studied fine arts because I wanted to be an artist, and I realized how difficult it is for emerging artists, or not emerging anymore, but to survive in the art world, not to be seen but by museum director. What would be your advice as a museum director for, you know, one of these emerging artists that could be today here or could hear us in the future?
I would advise to, as a young artist, really visit many shows, try to get in contact with curators, and I think nowadays, I think it's easier than maybe like 10 or 20 years ago, because many curators also like me, I mean, I didn't mention that before, but I mean, we are all using social media, and on Instagram, for example, also there I find interesting positions and I follow them, and then sometimes I contact them, meet them in the studio, and I think that's also a way to get in touch with interesting people, and just liking, following, maybe texting, maybe look, now I'm in Istanbul, maybe we can catch up and have a coffee and talk about the artworks, and just be brave, and text the people, and that's something I would say.
I think after we will be back in the conversation to digitalization, because I think at some point we all connect online or not, or we know each other before through that. But I would like to introduce Amar. We met each other because she requests information of an emerging artist I was supporting. So first of all, you are in charge of the residency, but you set up the advisory services. So can you tell us briefly about your advisory services and why you started that? Like, what pushed you to start the project?
Of course. So initially, I started the Beyrut art residency back in 2015. And the reason I started the residency was because I was an artist myself. And I was going on all these residencies abroad, including one in Istanbul, actually, where I came up with the idea, where I felt like we needed a space in Beirut, a live-work space for artists to work together, to collaborate, and to get to know the local art scene, because Beirut has such a rich art scene. And the residency ran from 2015 to 2020. Now we no longer have our space in Beirut after of course, all of the problems that the city is encountering. But what we do is send emerging Lebanese artists abroad on residencies. So we have partnerships with foundations in Greece, in the US, in France, in Italy, that we've been sending artists out because we really think this exchange is important. Now, during my time running the art residency, I encountered so many amazing international artists. We had over 200 artists come through the residency. And I stayed in touch with them, really got into their work, visited their exhibitions whenever I could. And that way, I started helping collectors encounter their work. And it was very informal at the beginning. I would have a friend who would be looking for an artwork, and I'd say, you know, we had this great Mexican artist at the residency. What do you think about this work? So very organically, it grew into like a side hustle. And then during the pandemic in 2020, everything was closed, everybody was in their houses, 4 walls, 4 white walls. And that's when I thought, you know, now it's time to formalize it. And I set up Aaz Advisory. And instead of just being reactive, I decided to be proactive, and I decided to shortlist every month the 20 emerging artists that I'm looking at and share them with my database of clients. So every month since then, my clients have been receiving this database where it's the emerging artists that I've recently discovered or that I've been working with for a long time. So it grew into that, and now we've expanded to offices in New York, Amsterdam, and Dubai.
And how is this process? Because for me 20 is big number but very small at the same time. Like you need to choose only 20. Like how is the process for you to, what marks the difference? Like do you have any artists, for example, now at the fair? Because you mentioned yesterday to me you were sending a newsletter this week.
That's the one. Sorry, I meant 20 artworks, not 20 artists, because 20 artists is actually a lot. And there are artists that I consistently work with, and new ones, obviously, that I find every month. So the newsletter features 20 artworks by artists that I'm watching, that are currently available from art fairs, from current gallery shows, or sourced directly from artist studios.
And how do you choose them?
From the PDFs that I get every day and from actually like coming to fairs, and definitely Instagram, as Wilko said, it's like the strongest tool right now that we have. And the artwork that I sold through your gallery that you used to work with was from my newsletter.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's very good to know. Yeah. So when you were having the residency, as well as I mentioned to Wilko, like how was the process to choose artists? Because I assume I ran a residency a long time ago too, and it's very difficult because you receive a lot of requests from artists, friends of artists, that they introduce you an artist to go to your residency. You were having someone helping you on the selection process? How was?
So when we first opened, we kind of had to do the outreach. We would post on different platforms like Res Artists and Residency Unlimited. There was these platforms where you can share your open call. In our third year, we started receiving 500 applications during each open call, which we do annually. So every September, we would get flooded with these applications. So we hired a jury that was experts with various positions in the art world. We had an architect, we had a curator, a gallerist, an artist, a filmmaker, and they would sit for 2 days, and we would have a slideshow pretty much going, and they deliberate and pick the artists that would be joining that year. And we always looked for the context, the relevance to Beirut. Like they could apply with the same application to a residency in Stockholm. So we'd ask, why Beirut? Why do you want to come here? And that was one of the defining factors of whether they'd make it or not.
And now that you established this collaboration with other residencies in other countries, you select the artists from Lebanon or that they are based in Lebanon and they travel to residencies in other countries?
Yes, so that's exactly how we do it. We made these kind of formal collaborations, and they also have to apply. So we shortlist 10 Lebanese or Beirut-based artists, and they apply, and then the residency gets to choose who will attend.
Well, thank you, Amar, and I will introduce Emirhan. Thank you for joining us. I'm very curious to know, I have the opportunity this morning to see a bit of your collection, but
thank you.
I think it will be interesting to know how you start collecting, because you are coming from family.
I mean, my story is kind of different. I see myself as a second generation collector, but I also do this as a business as well. Our family is into jewelry and the Grand Bazaar based actually. And my father in 1988 collected his first art. It was the Fikret Mualla, which I actually showed you today. It's still on my desk. And it's like a journey that he was very passionate to. So then it kind of grew into his life in a sense as well, because the whole house was all paintings and, like artists come and go. I mean, it's been like 25, 30 years to this. So the Turkish art market wasn't even a market back then. It was like a different story actually. So see it grow to this point and grow so much and become also international was like very cool I mean, I feel like sometimes you witness history, because recently just some very good names in Turkish art passed away, like Mehmet Güleryüz, Komet, and I had the chance of meeting them through my father as well, because we used to print their books actually. We had a printing shop back then where my father and a friend were like doing, and they kind of started, it grew so organically. I mean, it was so back then they started printing books for the artists, and then instead of getting paid, they used to get some pieces. Okay. And then as my father started to become friends with them as well, it turned out to be a different story. Eventually, I actually studied international relations and economics. I did some banking for a while, and it's actually the similar story. It was very unprofessional in a sense, or like very, like after a while I got kind of bored and I wanted to do these kind of things. And me and my cousin, we started a gallery. Okay. We did it for like 4 years. Then I kind of quit. I kept going with the gallery in another place, in another space, but then the advisory part, buy and sell part, the meeting with the artists, studio visits, it started taking so much time that I started, I decided that, I need to take another role in this world in a sense. Mm-hmm. Then it turned to be like, doing the collection and plus buying stuff, selling stuff, some projects and trying stuff like that. And, kept me for the last 14, 15 years. It's been a long journey, I mean. And that's the base of the story, actually. That's it. Yeah.
And it was the gallery focusing artists from Turkey, like living
it
here?
Was always. I mean, we do have some foreign artists in our collection. They have different stories, but it's mostly Turkish artists. Exactly. We also keep some of the collection and keep displaying it between me, my brother, and my mother. But we also do buy new artists as well. Like. Very similar to what you mentioned, actually. There is a project called Mamut Art Project in Turkey, mm-hmm. Where they select a jury every year, and it's an open application, but it has to be non-represented artists. It has to be independent artists, and like every year the jury changes, and every year they display a small fair, let's say, not exactly a fair, but the jury selects like 50 artists at max, and they present it every year. That's one of the main, for example, sources that I found young artists as well, because it really built a wall through the galleries, many galleries try to catch artists at the beginning of the fair and compete among themselves, so very similar market, just like you said.
Is there any structure similar than the one he mentioned, like in Germany, or because we do have in Spain as well an open call for artists that are not represented yet, or that they are like under 35 is the limit age they have, and a lot of galleries they go to see exactly who is the upcoming artist.
Well, in Germany there are some exhibitions but they are like kind of curated, but it's not like really with an application. I mean in Düsseldorf, Düsseldorf is the capital of North Rhine-Westphalia, and there is one exhibition where actually really some artists can apply, but then of course there is a jury they can choose. It's called like Die Große, it's like the big exhibition, and that's I think a quite sustainable way of also exhibiting artists, because this exhibition takes place in the museum of the city of Düsseldorf, like it's a Kunstpalast called, and they also have like a special budget just for acquiring pieces from that exhibition. So I think it's a quite good thing also for an artist to apply, but also when you exhibit there you have the chance to be part of a collection of a museum. But it's not just also the collection, it's also then like the parliament, they also have budget to acquire pieces there. It's really a way of supporting the local artists. Yeah, maybe that's a bit similar.
Yeah,
it is.
And for emerging artists, because you mentioned this morning when I visited the collection, but these people some of them not there. You mentioned that you support artists in another way, not only buying art.
A couple of times we did, some of the artists got accepted to great schools in Europe. Like, for example, one of them got into the Royal Dutch School, but they only take 4 non-European students every year. He didn't have the means to attend there, but as a group, for example, some of the collectors and friends of mine, we all gathered and helped him out, but we promised that we're going to do it for the first year. Second year, it's all on you. And for example, he really got into good places there. Yeah, he finished the school and he keeps working there, and kind of moved to Holland as well. that is a way, and the other way we actually do some help is, I mean, okay, it's okay to paint and easier to paint maybe, but for other materials, for example, we have a friend, also a collector, who has a marble factory, and some of the artists who doesn't have the means to go do it themselves, they use his space, and he's really like helpful. For example, he opened up a space for them. He helps out with the machines and also the people as well. You know, like because he has some skilled workers over there that help with the sculptures and everything. For example, so the material is, I think, a big issue with some of the sculpture and that kind of work. I also love the idea that, you know, companies should be more involved with the art as well. For example, Tosyalı Holding is doing something with Osman Dinç, a very acclaimed sculpture. You know, and for example, there was this another thing with an artist needed all the wood. He needs like a very big sculpture. You know, you support him with this. So the company thing, I think, is very important. It wasn't like this 10, 5, maybe like even 4 years ago in here. But now it's, I mean, the companies are also really trying to get involved and trying to help the artists with the materials in that sense as well, I think.
No, it's very interesting as well, the idea of supporting emerging artists in different ways. No, that sometimes we can think it's only you buy a work and that's it, but as well when I'm sometimes teaching, I'm always saying, you know, even if you cannot buy the artwork, now with this digitalization, you can share and probably you cannot buy, but someone else can buy or can support somehow. So that is more important now, I think, that to be connected. How do you feel is digitalization affecting on your everyday life in order to find new artists? All of you, like...
Well, with me it starts every morning with the scrolling. You wake up
That's true.
and you scroll.
That's true.
Thankfully I have like my own personal account where I see like my friends' children's pictures, and I have my business account where it's only art. So this is, for me, it's like a catalog every morning, and then the saved folder, and then I started categorizing the saved folder of Instagram, which helps me go back to it. So it's really using this one tool.
Is Instagram the platform?
Probably the top one, and then I guess the next would be the email PDFs, but between Instagram and that, I don't know, is there?
I mean, I think Instagram is like 10 steps ahead of Twitter and TikTok maybe. TikTok I don't use much, but Instagram, yeah. And I think the algorithm also is really clever in that sense, because as much as you see something, it keeps popping it to you. I think so. I really use it as well. What I also try to do is like, you know, talk to the artists so that they might suggest me some other studio, some other place to go. Actually, I think that's the exactly what you said. The community is the real deal. Though it's digitalized in a sense, still I think the physical presence is important as well. So I mean, I try to really like go to the studios and ateliers, like 2 studios every week for sure. I try to, like, sometimes I can't even find an artist to go, like, you know, at some point maybe, but then again, Instagram, emailing and talking to people, you always find something.
Yeah, we're going to ask that, no, that, okay, it's good to find them in the morning, but after sometimes the artists probably, they don't take the right photos, or like, it's very difficult. I am like very old school in that way, that I think that we need to see the art. That now, okay, Instagram is amazing, but everyone use filters for ourselves, everyone use filters for the pictures, so I think it's very important to be able to visit the artist studio, no? That I remember during the pandemic, I was doing online studio visits to artists in LA, because we were all, you know, in our houses, we cannot leave. But I think that you get 360 degrees of what the artist wants to transmit.
True. I mean, I really feel the same that way, that, you know, I really try to meet with the artists, be friends or like acquainted with them, because I really feel like if you're buying a piece or selling a piece, then you're selling part of the artist as well, in a sense. So as much as you know the person, you get to know the work and the, you know, the thought, the ambitions, everything behind it on another level, I think. So, and with the new generation of collectors in Turkey, I think as well, everybody sees this as an opportunity as well, because, you know, if you go buy a painting from an auction, it's okay, you can, you know, hang it, but if you go buy from the artist, meet with the person, then it's a whole experience, like, you can tell it to your kids in like 50 years later or so. So I think that, you know, also adds more value to the work as well, I think.
Are these new generations of collectors in Turkey interested in buying emerging artists? How do you feel?
I think so, but it also depends on the emerging artist scene was stronger a couple of years ago, I think, in Turkey. It is still strong in a sense because the market is definitely growing every year for sure, but with the economy, the attendance on the already established ones, I think, increased a bit more compared to a couple of years ago at least. But then again, so many new artists as well, so the market is, I think, always demanding something new in that sense too.
Amar, I wanted to ask you because you open offices in different locations now that going to America, and I was mentioning before to Wilko as well that I'm very interested that there are a lot of institutions, but artist residencies and collectors in America that they somehow understand collecting art in a faster way, so they don't think twice for an emerging artist. How do you see from your perspective in terms of emerging artists that you have clients in different locations? That affects?
Definitely buying speed, the rate of speed of buying is much faster in the US. Much faster in the US and in Dubai, obviously, like there's a lot more affluence and wealth. In Europe, it takes a lot more. There is a lot more back and forth. There's a lot more of the collectors wanting to potentially as well visit the artist studio. There's more interest in that actually, which is not a bad thing. It's just a bit more careful buying that we've encountered there. But what's interesting in the US, my business partner who set up the art residency with me is now based in New York, and because we've worked together for almost a decade now, so she's kind of my eyes and ears in New York, going on studio visits, meeting all the artists that are interesting to us living there, so it really helps with this interconnectedness.
Are there any of these artists that you put in the newsletter that they don't work with any gallery, for example, like that your partner in New York or yourself in Amsterdam, you visit a studio and you think, this artist doesn't have a gallery, but I really think that it's a good artist and my newsletter needs to know that this artist exists?
That's literally what happened yesterday. So it doesn't happen very often. Maybe it's 1 or 2 newsletters per year that have work sources directly from artist studios. But yesterday, right before sending the newsletter, found an artist on Instagram, got in touch with them so fast, got their artwork directly sent to my mail, got to speak to them on the phone, understand the story behind their work, put them in the newsletter, and that was the first work that sold yesterday. So it was so eye-opening that you really need to, nurture and talk to these younger artists, and it turns out he's based in Leipzig, and he's from Syria originally. Mm-hmm. So it was very interesting because, now that I'm in Germany, I will be able to do a studio visit eventually and have a relationship with the artists.
And Wilko, for you, for example, that in the museum now, you have been curating independent exhibitions, in different spaces, from galleries to non-for-profit spaces. How is your approach now to visiting artists or to discover them?
Well, it's almost the same practice. For me, Instagram is very important, and I'm also today very happy that, with Zoom, you can, even artists who are not close to Germany, it's always interesting to have also digital conversations and digital studio visits, and I think that's also important to get in contact and in a deeper contact with the artwork, because nowadays with our phones we can easily show the artworks and the idea, and and also from the museum perspective, I find it very interesting sometimes not just to look how the artists present themselves with their posts, but because sometimes some of the artworks they are also doing live streams, for example, and that's always a kind of tool also to get in touch with the artist in a different way. And I'm trying the same with doing, for example, guided tours live, and that's always a good point to always get to know also new and other people from other countries.
As the panel, they asked me about emerging artists, and I'm always asking about who is an emerging artist and what means emerging artist. And sometimes I say it's not about the age. Sometimes for me it could be as well an artist that nobody knows and is somehow emerging for a place. No, we used to have with the gallery artists that they were well known in the States, but nobody knows them in Spain. So for us was a sort of, it's emerging too. It's not due to the age, but it's in a space. What is your perspective about emerging artists? Like how each of you understand emerging artists as an artist?
Well, for me, it's not about the age. It's like really about the artwork and the idea, and like it should be like something special, contemporary that really, works at the moment, and also in the way how the artist is presented in several institutions, and that's a way how it's interesting to see kind of development also. I mean, that's what I would call then emergent, that you see how quick the career is developing, and that's always nice to be part of it. Yeah.
Amar?
Absolutely. So what part of institutional collections they're in, gallery representation, of course, shows, and maybe at some point secondary market presence would kind of show that they've become mid-career. So I guess before that would be emerging. Yeah.
Thank you.
I mean, I think the works are very decisive on how emerging the artist is in a sense, but I don't see it as with an age as well, but usually are young people actually. I mean, that's how I define it in a level too, because I mean, yes, people keep with their passion about it, but seeing like a new, like new graduated artists, like they're always like, I mean, I see it as more of a way, like, they know what they want to do, but then it also shows as well in a sense that it always comes and goes. But some establishments, like, they kind of repeat the same process because they reached a level that, it kind of fit there. But with the emerging artists, in a sense, I like the word that, it's something new, something fresh. That makes me feel like more of an emerging artist in a scenario.
And in a commercial way, for example, and we can do the opposite, so we start with you. What would be your suggestion if someone is not sure about buying an emerging artist or buying an established name? What would you say?
I mean, for me, first you get to know the person, I think. I mean, if it's an emerging artist, if you get to know the person and if you have a relationship, then it's something, like more exciting to buy. But I don't think people buy emerging artists as investments in a sense, I recommend blue chip stuff for that, I think, in my perspective at least. But for the emerging artists,
because now the market is in a situation, that there are some collectors asking as well, like if it's better, to invest in an emerging artist, that probably the price is cheaper, but it has more risk.
The issue is now there's so many emerging artists actually, and the market is bigger as well. So to pick the ones that will, succeed, let's say, or like become blue chip is tougher in a sense. I think it depends on the collection. If you're only buying emerging artists, yeah, it's a better approach maybe. But if you're, like going for both, then maybe a couple of times some emerging, but usually the blue chip ones, I recommend people to go actually, yeah.
Amar?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's the reason behind why they're buying. If they want kind of something more stable, then they'd go for blue chip. But what I recommend is always emerging. The story is much more compelling. Their journey, you're part of the beginning of it. And then you follow the artists, you follow what they do in their career, and it just makes you feel that much more connected to the piece and the artist.
If you're going to be part of the journey, then go buy the emerging artist for sure. But if you want to just put it on your roll and, not spend so much time on it, then the blue chip might sound better. But emerging artists is definitely more fun in the sense that you become part of their life and see their journey, exactly.
I think because with them, they are more accessible somehow, no? That you can have a longer conversation or longer relations with them, no? You can feel closer to them.
Absolutely, and you can also like grow with them in a way and get to know them better. And I think it's very important also to think about like supporting really an artist, and like that's, and also like not always, but as you mentioned, like basically like emerging artists are very often younger, and that's also always a different perspective then, on looking at art and producing.
So what will be and I think we can conclude for that, your personal advice to emerging artists. Like, you know, it's very difficult to keep going as an artist. I'm sure so many artists, they think like to throw the towel and, you know, start to do other things. Market is changing. I always try to tell them that they need to follow what they think that is good and not to, you know, somehow make this because people tell you now painting is better than no. If you are a sculptor, you don't need to hear what others are telling you, know, like art, to make art is something very passionate that needs to go from inside. We were here in the previous talk as well today, no, that art is something is here, and Sar was saying, no, so what would be your advice for an emerging artist?
Well, I would say that they should believe in themselves, they should be brave, and they should continue doing that what they are doing, what they love, and that what they express, and try to reach out, get to know people. That's what I would suggest, yeah.
Thank you.
Absolutely, and not to ignore the necessary evils of the business, of networking, of going to gallery openings. Get a good photographer to take pictures of your work, put a website together, make yourself accessible to be out there.
Thank you.
I think that's the case as well. You have to, I mean, some people don't want to, but you have to be out there, and you have to, I mean, I don't want to say exactly networking, but you have to socialize and really have a base of, you know, like friends, collectors, patrons, just people to talk to even. I think you grew very organically like that. I think that's the way, and Instagram is, as we have discussed. You have to be able to use it in a level at least that, you know, people can see your stuff. That's for sure. Yeah.
Because, you need to be visible,
because it has such a big reach now. You know, like even like all over the world. So yeah. It's one of the major tools. I really agree. I mean, we all decided on the same thing, I think. Yeah.
Thank you. I don't know if there is any question.
Thank you for this. I was actually, I shouldn't say this, but this was the one panel I was really looking forward to, because I think, especially now, it is extremely difficult to be an emerging artist. So my question to all of you is, what advice would you give to the people around emerging artists who are telling them that maybe they should find another job instead?
Depends on the circumstances, I guess. You know, like if they have like 2 kids and, you know, still as an emerging artist trying to, you know, do something, then maybe they might look for something else. But it's tough. I mean, the market is big. So many people. It's, you know, it's like the movie effect in a sense. You pop, but then you can, you know, go down so fast in a way as well. I see so much pressure on some people in that sense too. So keep up. That's the part I might suggest, I think.
It's an interesting question because, you know, a lot of us would say, yeah, carry on, keep going forward, and if your friends or your circle around you is being negative, change the circle. But at the end of the day, I was an emerging artist and I kind of knew when to stop. So you have to see, you don't need to leave the art world. You can still find your role within an art world in a way that can be conducive to making an income if that's what you're after. But it doesn't mean that, you know, the opportunities are not there within the art world if art is not what you're meant to be doing.
I would always say, yeah, believe in yourself, and to come back to the income, I think it's always good to have at least like another small job, and maybe that can be also a job that is kind of connected to the thing you love to do, so you can be financially independent and can still like do your artworks. I think that's important to find a solution there.
That's definitely easier in Germany than
maybe
than Turkey for sure.
I think it's very difficult, but as all of them say, probably I'm more connected with what Amar said because I study fine arts too, and somehow you find the place, you know? So I was drawing, but I saw drawings of other people and I thought, oh, they are better than my own drawings, so why I should keep not pushing that. So I started to curate exhibitions with them because I thought I was better helping them to do that because they prefer to focus in the studio, and I was preferring like to use the floor map and organizing them and creating a text around. So I think the most important is to know where is your place. That of course is not an easy situation now, and it can take you years to understand. But after you can contribute in another way, and as a mediator as well, educator in a museum, so you don't need to be only artist. Well, if we don't have any more questions, I want to thank you too and
you.
all the public.
Thank you.
Thank you once again for joining us for the first day of the Contemporary Istanbul Foundation Dialogue Series. Join us again tomorrow at 1 p.m. for day 2. Enjoy the fair.